All right. This is the second game between Yevon and Delial. The first game, Yevon did a phenomenal job getting a winning position. Quite hard to find the win, actually. I didn't in commentary, and I knew there was one. Seto, of course, spotted it instantly because Seto is a cheat code. But this is game two of their match. But to say Yevon did a phenomenal job in game one. Yevon starts with 3-4-9-9, and I've generally said on this rule set, if you find a starter that's like annoying for the opponent to take, you're usually doing really well. And this is not just annoying for Deli to take, he can't touch it. And there's very little setup potential. And if you look at like corners for Deli and its natural corners, like this is really well covered by Yevon's hand. This is covered by Yevon's hand. This is covered by Yevon's hand. This is covered by Yevon's hand. But Deli doesn't need the natural corner. He can play an unnatural corner because he notices this is completely safe. And it actually is a really serious threat, I think, of following with 8-3, 8-7, and 1 and just building this wall down. So while you might be able to go in 6, like, we got to be really careful. Like, a move like this looks natural to me because you can take it back both ways and it blocks in your card. But I think Deli just goes in 1 there, and it's quite dangerous. So it's kind of hard to evaluate which card, if you're going to block 6, would you want to block 6 with, because which card do you need to fight Deli's threat of going in 1? Now, if I remember right, I didn't check any depth on the solver stuff here. I just ran some background stuff so I get it to output some scores for the game. But I remember it saying there are lots of ties here in 7, which seems very strange to me because that doesn't interfere with Deli's plan to go in 1 at all, right? So here I'd be looking at 1 and 6. And my thought is, which does Deli want more, of 1 or 6? He has no threat in 6. That often brings us to 1, right? Because he has some threat in 1. But the question is, how good is his threat in 1? Because if it's not very good, we still probably should play 6. And But if it is very good, then maybe we have to block 1. And I think here, my guess would be we block 1. And I think if we can block 1 with an 8 facing down, either 4-9-8-5 or 8-7-8-3, there are probably differences here. My instinct's 8-7-8-3, because if Deli wants to attack it, we can build a wall facing out, and we have fairly reasonable cards for this endgame. So this is my best guess. I do remember the solver saying, nope, you want to play 7 here, but I feel like blocking 1 is pretty important. I really like Deli's way of building out a wall, and following what we saw from Vial the last time, probably getting a clear advantage out of the opening. Playing next to these corner starters has been really strong, and there's some games in the Stuff Smokes match that have done this as well, though again, I don't want to talk too much about that match because it is ongoing. Um, However, there's something that sometimes happens in positions like this, right? Let's say your opponent starts in 1, and you're trying to react to it, right? You don't have squares, or like you have one square but not the other. Say, let's pretend, let's pretend Deli could. I guess there's not a good example here. Yeah, there's not a good example here. Um, okay, so let's make this a different starter to be a better example for what I want. Let's say Yevon had gone here. And you might say from Deli's point of view, like, okay, I have a capture in 4. Now, it's not a great capture here, but let's ignore the specifics. I have a capture in 4. I have nothing in 2. How can I set up 2? Okay, maybe I go here where 7719 is set up for 2. You know, you start looking for moves like that, right? And maybe you don't end up playing it. Maybe it's bad here. Maybe that's just you have too little up to make this game so up facing. You know, there's lots of reasons that might be bad, but you see something and you see you have this side covered but not this side, so it's easy to think through how can I react to the thing I don't currently deal with. But sometimes you're given a starter where you can't react to it at all, or pretend like it was a starter like this. No, not that. Like this. Where just you so easily have it covered that you can do whatever you want elsewhere, but it can be hard, depending on like what kind of stylistic player you are, to find a more abstract plan. I, for instance, think in these positions, I often go at least a little astray because I don't have a clear way of orienting myself around the play, and I like being very concrete in my thinking and my play. There are other more abstract players who are much more comfortable meeting this kind of move. But I also find when I play this kind of move, I can often, I play something kind of that doesn't give them anything to grasp onto, and they play something in response, and now I can grasp onto what they played and do something concrete in response. And I like playing that way. One thing I've noticed, for instance, this is data from a while ago, but like in opposite corner positions, Akiyama almost always plays 2, 4, 6, or 8. Almost always. He's like a really like, okay, we have like kind of the most abstract starting position. I am going to force it into something concrete. And I have some strong tendencies in that direction as well. Um, and so I guess what I want to say here is Yevon already has this locked in card in 3, and he has no way to attack Deli's card in 2. So he doesn't really have, like, the position's not telling him to do something. The position's not saying you have to go in 6 to lock it in. It's not, and it's not saying you have to do a setup in 4 because there's like not setups in 4. Though apparently, like I think it's setting some moves in 4 tie. The solver is a weirdo, whatever. Um, like there's not something specific to do. And I find in this kind of position where you've given people no specifics, they will often do something very abstract. And Yevon does something really abstract here, and this ends up losing him the game. He goes 7, 4, 7, 8 in 8. Now, this does not create a threat in 5. So my expectation from Deli's side would be, without having like looked at this at all, go in 1. That was our idea. But I think this is not precise. Yeah, Yevon actually has this move in 5, and somehow, miraculously, even though there's like plus wall potential here, and even though Yevon does not create a threat in 4, he does have some plus wall ideas. Somehow his 8, 7, 8, 3 is just so good up down here, which is pretty believable if you look at it, that he can get a tie. This is barely a tie. And Deli does not go for this move, even though it's very appealing. Deli takes different safety and goes 8, 3, 8, 7, and 9. And now I'm not sure how much there is for Yevon to do. I think he rightly realizes you get 5, 8, 7, 6 out of your hand. You need 8, 7, 8, 3 for up down, and 4, 9, 8, 5 has a lot of capturing potential going to the right. You want to keep that in your hand. He tries 5, 8, 7, 6 in 7. Deli is really lacking downs, so you can see how this might try to, like, for instance, and he's ready to punish a move like this because he can combo. Yeah, and that card in 3 is still safe, but Deli just grabs safety of his own, and it's not quite enough here. If you go this and say my 8, 7, 8, 3 dominates as a sweeper, sure it does, but it needs to take 2 cards, not 1. It's going to take something, but it's not going to take enough. I think 8, 7, 8, 3 was played in the game, and is this how it finished? Yeah, this is how it finished. But there's nothing to do here, right? If you start in 1, you have no left. Like you're not flipping enough here, even though you get to land in 5 on the last turn. And if you start in 4, you have no left. What are we doing here, right? So there was nothing to do here, and there was really nothing to do after 8. And I'm not really sure what 8 intended, except that I think it was a move that felt like Jadot sometimes would make these odd moves and sides kind of distant from the action, where he would just feel like, okay, um, kind of the top sector of the board, I feel good about, right? I have a card there, it's doing well. I'm going to play a move in another sector of the board that I feel my hand interacts with, right? His 4, 9, 8, 5 has all 3 captures. His 5, 8, 7, 6 potentially plays off it well. His 8, 7, 8, 3 just wants these types of squares open, and it doesn't block any of those squares. You can see how the rest of his hand would look at this, and he'd be like, this feels synergistic to what I'm trying to do. And I do see this mostly in players who were really good around 2005, like Yevon making TTAC 3 finals, and Jadot making SE Eris finals a year later. But I think just kind of fitting nicely with your own cards often turns out to be the less valuable thing than kind of the raw fundamentals of safety. But you don't see players like this doing this haphazardly. They do it, or just randomly. They do it, I think, mostly in these positions where there's just, oh, I have no need to interact with the top of the board. There's not a good way for me to connect with it, so I'm going to do something somewhere else. And sometimes you just have to force that concrete action, I guess, near where everything else is happening, and play a move like here, which I'm going to guess ties, but I don't actually know. That one does tie. But look at this. Look at this. Look at how many moves in 7 tie. What a deranged thing that is. Okay, everything in 1 ties. Everything in 6 loses, though. 8, 7, 8, 3, and 1, or 4, 9, 8, 5, and or 4, 9, 8, 5, and 4. That's very strange to me. That 6 is often met by 4. I bet 1 is also winning. I bet you don't have to go 4. Yeah, you can go 1. Wait, you don't go 4 at all here. Okay, what was the move where I'm supposed to... There's the win in 4. If you go 6... Oh no, the wins are in 5 or 7. But I think also there's wins in 1. Okay, I was looking ahead to the next move, and I wasn't looking at the immediate move. But 6 loses. But it's pretty remarkable that 7 and 9 have 3 draws apiece. But 1 is the natural square. I like this visualization because I think you can quickly kind of see which squares you should have checked first. And to me, looking at this, thinking I should check 7 and 8, 9, 7, 8, and 9 first, or like spend most of your time checking 7, 8, and 9 feels very weird to me. But you know, there were multiple ties in 8, right? The bottom of the board had a lot more ties than the top 2/3 of the board. So maybe Yevon's instinct for 8 was not at all bad here. He just didn't quite find the right card there. Because there were multiple cards that did tie an 8 here. That's really interesting, right? That's saying, like, he's noticing something here I'm not noticing. And his move was a mistake. But it's still a quite interesting move. And he still correctly identified. It does seem correct. Like, you can play the concrete way in 1, and 1 is good. But you can also play the kind of, I don't want to do anything that remotely interacts. Anything in 4, 5, and 6, if I'm not going in 1, I'm just giving them 1, and I'm putting a card in an area of the board I don't want filled. I want cards in 7, 8, and 9 away from it. And Yevon correctly got there. He just didn't quite find the right move to do so. Kind of interesting that 7, 4, 7, 8 ends up being a card he really has to hold on to in his hand. I'm not sure why that would be. So, interesting game. And, yeah, clearly missing parts of it, but, that's going to happen. So, yeah, I'd be curious people's thoughts on this one, because Yevon's move is quite close to being good, but 7, 4, 7, 8 ends up being a mandatory card to hold on to. It's very interesting.